All right, let's get started for Wednesday here. Got a kind of busy day trying to figure out the weather for this. I've got to show you one new thing and then get you started on the learning activity here. Um, we learned about doing methods last Monday, and we learned about how to call a method and how to pass parameters to a method. So we learned oops, wrong one. How to call a method and declare it so you could pass a string to it and then call it that way. But all of our methods were void. We always said public static void here. So one thing we need to do is talk about returning a value from a method here. And I think the best description of this comes from our Think Java text about returning a value. There's a number of functions we call, you may have used already, that return a value, like the math functions where we might say the absolute values. You might say math.absolute value and then provide some values and it would create, do that. Or math dot if you're going to do the sine or cosine of an angle, you might do that. And you might put it in inside a calculation like this, or you might just store it in a variable here. These are methods that return a value for it. How do we declare a variable like that? So let's say we wanted a method to calculate the area given the radius of a circle. We would say public static and then not void, but double if it's going to return a double. So whatever it's going to return, so if it's going to return a string, this would be string. If it's going to return an integer, it would be integer. If it's going to return a decimal, it would be double here. So, and then we need to also add a return statement here, and the return statement has to have a variable, say return in a variable, and that variable has to match this type. So here we're declaring a double variable called result. We're doing our calculation, pi r squared, to calculate the area, and then we're returning that area here for this. Now, when we call that method, we would just say like calculate area and then specify some value here as a parameter. It would go up there, do the calculation, return the calculation, and the method itself kind of takes on that value. So we have to use that method call. Usually we like store it in a variable, like we'd say area equals calculate area. So if your method's on a line by itself, well, let's do this. I'm going to jump down here and look at another example I just added of rolling dice here. So I have a void method that just rolls 3 dice, adds them up, and prints out the sum. And we would call this, we'd say rolling dice, and we'd call print dice our method, and it would run. So this is a void method. It doesn't return anything here. And I call it on a line by itself for this. Now, but what if in my main program, I wanted to do something with the dice? I wanted to have roll 3 dice. And if it was greater than 12, I wanted to say you win here. I don't, in my main program, I don't have access to the sum. It prints it out down here. So I'm going to have a different method here called roll 3 dice. I'm going to call that up here. And it's going to return an integer. So it rolls 3 dice, figures out a sum, and then returns that. So now I've added this return statement. And it's not a void, it's an int here. So now I call roll dice. But I want to store that value somewhere. So I'm going to declare a variable that's going to be an integer. My dice equals roll dice. And then I can use that. I can say something like if my dice is greater than maybe 12, then print UN else you lose. So now I can roll the dice and it'll tell me if I win or lose each time here. So again, sometimes we're going to declare methods that return a value. We'll say public static and then whatever type they are. We'll make sure return a variable of that type. And then when we call that, we will generally like store that result in another variable. Or we could do it in a calculation here for this. I could, if I wanted, I could, instead of doing it right there, I could just call the roll 3 dice right here. I wouldn't have to store that variable, but I suggest when you're getting started, you tend to store things in a variable for a while when possible. It'll help with your debugging. So this is going to be important today because today we're going to be calling methods and returning not integers, but strings a lot. So that's what we're going to work on today for this. So we're going to do the learning exercise, and you're going to want to post your output here to the discussion. So, but let's go into the learning exercise and look at that. I'll just warn you, I've just updated this in the last 24 hours because we're using one weather forecasting site, and that site is no longer available in the way we want. And so we switched to another weather forecasting site. I think I have all the stuff converted to the new weather forecasting stuff. So just so you know, but like the video that's shown here is with the old system here. So what we want you to do is create a new project and copy the contents of this class into your stuff. So actually the class is down here. I should put it up there also, I guess. Okay, so you want to create a new project and you want to paste this code into your new project. Run it. It won't display. You should be able to run it without any errors. It shouldn't do anything yet. So see if you can get a new project started in NetBeans, get this code into that new project and run it. It won't do anything yet, but then you can start working on it. So then you can go through work through the different parts of step 1. When you get to step 1 done, go on to step 2 and see how far you can get today. Today we have Heba, one of our TAs, back, so she can help you with any of this. Heba was just at a conference, Grace Hopper. So you had fun there, I hear. You want to tell them just a little bit about, so I don't, because these students probably have never been to a computing conference. So what was it like? That's Grace. So, uh, here's the conference. I always wanted to hear Joy speak, because we use her in the CIS Principles class about, recognizing faces, that sort of stuff. So I was excited to see there. And America, Ferraro, would be cool. Okay. Was I? So, okay. So, uh, Heba can help and I can help. So get started, try to get this set up with this and see if you can follow the exercise here and we'll see how you go. Okay. So, one thing I'm going to give you an option for in this is that we send data back and forth on computers in two common formats. One is called JSON, JSON, and the other is called XML. And we can exchange data in either way. And today you can use either of these methods. So there's two methods, one called retrieve XML, where you specify the city, and one called retrieve JSON. And you can do either one to get the data back. And so what you want to be doing is calling that. And if we look down here, here's our public static string retrieve XML, and it needs a city, which is a string. So I call retrieve XML with a city that's a string. Similar, the signature for retrieve JSON is the same, public static string. So to return a string, it's called retrieve JSON. And again, we specify the string here. So up here, I want to call my retrieve, like here, retrieve XML. And then as the parameter, I want to specify a string for the city name there. So I'm going to say Duluth. And that's going to return a string. If I look down here, remember, public static string. So I want to store that in a string variable. And again, you can choose, you can call either retrieve XML or you can call retrieve and use the JSON format. I think for new users, XML might be a little easier to look at and work with. But to tell you the truth, real programmers, we just use JSON now. We used to use XML. Have you ever used XML anywhere? Yeah. So JSON's more common, but again, so you can do either one here. And then you want to retrieve that data and print out that weather to start with. But it's going to be in computer-like format. So then once you get that printed out, your job is to figure out how to convert that weather data into something more human recognizable in part two. So the goal of part one, hopefully you're made some progress on there, is to call the retrieve either XML or retrieve JSON command with the city of Duluth as a parameter and store the string and then print that out here. So again, I'm calling Here I'm calling retrieve JSON with Duluth. I'm storing it and I'm printing it out. And when I run it, it should go to this Open API website, get the weather for Duluth, and return it back to you here. It'll look something like this is what JSON looks like. It's a bunch of key value pairs where we have some things like a description. It is few clouds and temperature. The temp is 48.33 degrees out there. So it'll bring it to you in this format here. Again, if you do the XML one, you'll get the same data just in a slightly different format. So I'm getting this error sometimes, and you have to see how often. I'm not sure how often we get this, where I'll get an error of some sort or another. So let me know if you're getting this error very often. I'm not sure why it's giving me that error. Yeah. So when you go on to part two, what we want to do is we want to parse this data. We want to try, so we get this computerized, like here's the JSON data here, and there's a section here for the temperature. We want to find that in this big long string. We have a big long string of data. We want to find the word temp, or in XML, I think it says temperature. We're going to find that, and then from that, we're going to get this substring. We're just going to try to pull the actual temperature out. We'd like it to print out that temperature. So we'd like it to print out rather than this whole gobbledygook. We'd like to just say like the temperature is 48 degrees there. So here we talk about ways of finding the word temp in here, finding the index, what character that is at. So maybe if this is at character, 150 here, then we're going to go and grab characters like 155 through 160 and hopefully get the temperature from that. So that's your goal, is to use and then we're going to use the index of to find it, and then the substring, once we've found that, the index like 150, to grab the actual temperature out of there. So see if you can grab the actual temperature out of here and display that on the screen rather than this whole thing. And to do that, you'll create your own method. So right here is a spot to add your own method. So add your own method and then call it here for that. See how that goes. So quick update on this. What we want to do is we're calling this weather data, and then we're trying to parse it and get just the temperature out of there. So we find this index of the temperatures. We look where temp is. So in this big long string, temp or temperature, depending on which one, you should find that. Now, you should also check that you find it. If you misspelled this, if I put in the wrong thing here, I won't find it, and I'll return a -1 there for that. So be careful that you should have an if then and here to check this index. But assuming you have it set up correctly and your if then is correct, you should find the right location here. And then what it'll tell, and I'm just printing off the index. The index is 144, which means 144 characters into this string is the word temperature. And then I want to grab the current temperature, which is 50.29 degrees. So I'm going to grab a substring from the weather of the index. And again, you have to figure out which I'm doing the index +3 to the index +12. And that's printing off the temperature as P quote colon 50.29 comma. So it is actually printing off too much there. It's printing off the end of the temperature all the way up to the comma. So it's printing off that much of the substring. So you want to grab just this much of the substring here. So see if you can work changing your index value so you just get the temperature, not the colon and not the comma, not the quote. You just want the temperature and print that out in your up here. So see if you can get yours to print out just the temperature. If you get that, fine. The third part is to look for some other weather feature there. So like maybe you want to grab the description that says clear skies, or you want to find the pressure or the humidity here and display that. So you want to write another method that would be like parse humidity that would do something similar, but look for humidity and not temperature in your string. Okay, see how far you can get with that.